If you had told me yesterday that I'd end up locked in the school's archive room with Sarah Chen, our impossibly perfect student council vice president, I would have laughed in your face. Yet here I am, sitting on a dusty floor surrounded by decades of yearbooks and student records, watching her pace back and forth between metal filing cabinets like a caged tiger in designer jeans. The weak fluorescent light flickers overhead, casting strange shadows on her usually composed face. And I can't help but think that this whole situation feels like something out of a teen movie, except those usually don't feature the school's biggest nobody trapped with its second most popular student at 6:45 p.m. on a Friday. "This is all your fault, James Harrison," Sarah says for the third time in the past hour, running her fingers through her long black hair in frustration. The gesture makes her seem more human somehow, less like the untouchable goddess who glides through our school hallways with perfect posture and an ever-present iPad. I want to point out that she's the one who let the door close behind us, but something about the way her voice trembles slightly makes me hold my tongue. Instead, I go back to examining the ancient lock on the heavy wooden door, even though we both know it's futile. These archive rooms were built in the 1960s, back when schools apparently thought their records needed bank vault level security. The irony of our situation isn't lost on me. Just this morning, I was cursing my luck at being chosen for the annual digitization project, a tedious task of scanning old student records that nobody actually wants to do. The faculty usually picks a few reliable students to help out, and somehow my reputation as the quiet kid who spends too much time in the photography club darkroom got me nominated. What I hadn't expected was for Sarah Chen, who usually delegates such mundane tasks to junior council members, to volunteer to supervise the project herself. Even more surprising was her insistence on starting today, a Friday afternoon when most students were rushing home to begin their weekend. I steal another glance at her as she checks her phone for the 100th time, probably hoping that somehow a signal has magically penetrated the thick walls and metal shelving. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, I can see something I've never noticed before, a small scatter of freckles across her nose that she usually covers with makeup. It's strangely endearing, this tiny imperfection on her otherwise flawless face. Not that I've spent much time looking at her face, of course. Well, no more than any other guy at Riverdale High who's ever had a silent, hopeless crush on Sarah Chen. The last hour replays in my mind like a scene from one of the old films I love to watch. Me arriving at the archive room with my camera, I take it everywhere. Another reason people think I'm weird, ready to photograph some documents before scanning them. Sarah surprising me by already being there, surrounded by stacks of files and muttering something about getting ahead of schedule, the heavy door swinging shut behind us with an ominous click. The slow realization that the door only opened from the outside, and that the ancient intercom system was about as functional as a chocolate teapot. And now here we are, stuck together until either someone notices we're missing or the morning janitor makes his rounds, whichever comes first. "Can't you do something with your phone?" Sarah asks, interrupting my thoughts. "You're supposed to be good with technology, right?" Her tone isn't exactly accusatory, but there's an edge to it that makes me wonder if she's more scared than angry. It's strange hearing her voice directed at me at all. In 3 years of sharing various classes, this is probably the most words she's ever spoken to me at once. Unless my phone has suddenly developed the ability to pick heavy-duty locks or phase through solid wood, we're still stuck. I reply, immediately regretting my sarcasm when I see her face fall. But hey, at least we have light and water. I gestured to the ancient water cooler in the corner, which I'm only about 60% sure won't give us some kind of waterborne disease. And enough reading material to last several lifetimes. I pick up a yearbook from 1987, its cover featuring hairstyles that should have stayed buried in time. Sarah's laugh catches me off guard. It's not the perfectly measured, socially appropriate laugh I've heard her use in school assemblies, but something more genuine and slightly snotty. She quickly covers her mouth, looking mortified, but I can't help grinning Did Sarah Chen, queen of poise and proper behavior, just snort? I did not, she says primly, but there's a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth, and I'm not the queen of anything. That would be Jessica Martinez, our student council president and Sarah's best friend, is indeed treated like royalty at Riverdale High, where Sarah is all efficiency and organization, Jessica is charm and charisma. Together they make an intimidating team that runs our school with the precision of a Swiss watch, right? Sorry, Princess of Poise. Then, I duck as she throws an old manila folder at my head. It misses and scatters papers across the floor, college acceptance letters from 1992. As we both dive to gather them up, our hands brush briefly, and I feel a jolt of electricity that has nothing to do with the flickering fluorescent lights. Sarah jerks her hand back like she's been burned, and for a moment, our eyes meet. In the harsh lighting, her dark eyes look almost golden, and there's something in them I've never seen before: vulnerability, maybe, or fear. Of being stuck here, of me, of the way the air between us suddenly feels charged with possibility. The moment stretches out like taffy, thick and sweet and slightly scary, until the lights flicker again, making us both jump. Sarah quickly retreats to her corner, clutching the gathered papers like a shield. We should try to get some work done while we're stuck here, she says, her voice slightly higher than usual. These records aren't going to digitize themselves. She's right, of course, it would be sensible to use this time productively. But as I watch her awkwardly settle herself on the floor, carefully smoothing her jeans and arranging papers around her like some kind of organized chaos, I have a feeling that getting work done is going to be the last thing on either of our minds tonight. Time moves differently when you're locked in a room with your secret crush. The minutes stretch out like hours, yet somehow 2 hours have passed in what feels like moments. Sarah and I have settled into an uneasy rhythm, sorting through old records in opposite corners of the room, occasionally breaking the silence with awkward attempts at conversation that fade away like smoke. The only constant is the soft rustle of paper and the irregular hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Oh my God, Sarah suddenly exclaims. Breaking the quiet, she's holding a yearbook from 1995, her eyes wide with delight. Is this ... is this Mr. Thompson? She turns the book around to show me a photo of our current calculus teacher, sporting a magnificent mullet and what appears to be a leather vest. I can't help but laugh, and soon we're both giggling like children, the tension in the room finally starting to crack. Wait, I say, reaching for my camera. This needs to be documented for posterity. Sarah watches with interest as I adjust the settings to compensate for the poor lighting. Photography is my safe space, the one thing I know I'm good at, and I find myself explaining the process without thinking. The fluorescent lights create a weird color temperature, so you have to ... I trail off, realizing I'm probably boring her to death with technical details. But Sarah surprises me. Keep going, she says, scooting closer to see the camera's display. I've always wondered how you get your photos to look so amazing. When I stare at her blankly, she blushes slightly. I've seen your work in the school magazine. That series you did on hidden spaces of Riverdale High was incredible. The way you captured the empty swimming pool at dawn ... It was like seeing something I look at every day for the first time. I'm stunned. Not only has Sarah Chen seen my photographs, but she actually remembers them. I didn't think anyone really looked at those, I mumble, suddenly very aware of how close she's sitting. She smells like vanilla and something else I can't quite place. Old books, maybe, from all the time we've spent in here. Of course they do, she says, looking at me with an expression I can't quite read. You know, that's the problem with you, James Harrison. You never seem to realize how interesting you actually are. The words hang in the air between us, heavy with implications I'm afraid to examine too closely. To distract myself, I start showing her how to use my camera, explaining about aperture and shutter speed. Sarah turns out to be a surprisingly quick study. And soon we're taking ridiculous photos of our temporary prison, dramatic shots of dusty corners, artsy close-ups of cobwebs, and even a few selfies with particularly embarrassing yearbook photos. When she laughs, really laughs, her whole face transforms, and I find myself taking pictures of that too, trying to capture the way her eyes crinkle at the corners, the unguarded joy that makes her seem so different from the perfectly composed vice president everyone knows. "Delete that one," she demands, trying to grab the camera after I snap a particularly candid shot. I hold it above my head, using my height advantage to keep it out of reach. "I probably look terrible. You never look terrible," I say without thinking, then immediately wish I could take the words back. But instead of recoiling or getting uncomfortable, Sarah goes very still, looking up at me with those dark eyes that seem to see right through me. "You really mean that, don't you?" she says softly. Before I can respond, her phone buzzes loudly, making us both jump. The moment shatters like glass, and Sarah quickly retreats to check her messages, even though we both know there's no signal in here. The silence that follows is different from before, charged with something that makes my skin tingle. To break it, I start flipping through another yearbook, this one from 2000. "Hey, look at this," I say, pointing to a photo of the student council from that year. Guess some things never change. The VP back then looks just as stressed as you do during assembly meetings. Sarah comes over to look, but instead of laughing, she sighs heavily. "Is that how everyone sees me? Just a stressed out VP who can't relax?" There's something in her voice I've never heard before, a vulnerability that makes her seem suddenly very young and very human. "No," I say carefully, turning to face her. "That's how everyone sees Sarah Chen, student council vice president. But I don't think that's really you, at least, not all of you." I gesture to the camera, to the laughing, unguarded photos we just took. "That's you too. The girl who snorts when she laughs and gets excited about embarrassing teacher photos and actually knows something about photography. She's quiet for so long that I start to worrying I've said too much." Then in a voice barely above a whisper, she says, "Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing into that other Sarah, the perfect one everyone expects me to be. Do you know I can't remember the last time I did something just because I wanted to? Not because it would look good on my college applications or because someone expected it of me." The confession hangs in the air between us, raw and honest in a way that makes my heart ache. Without thinking, I reach out and take her hand. Her fingers are cold, and she startles slightly at the contact, but she doesn't pull away. "Is that why you volunteered for this project?" I ask, suddenly understanding. "Because it was something nobody expected perfect Sarah to do," she laughs. But it's a different kind of laugh, soft and a little sad. Maybe I just wanted to spend some time with the boy who sees beauty in empty swimming pools and dusty corners. Her eyes widen as if she hadn't meant to say that out loud. And she quickly adds, "I mean, I've always been curious about what you see through that camera of yours." The air in the room feels electric now, charged with possibilities and unspoken words. I'm acutely aware that we're still holding hands, that we're sitting closer than we ever have before, that in this dusty, forgotten room, all the usual rules and roles that define us at school seem very far away. Sarah Chen isn't just the untouchable vice president anymore, and I'm not just the weird photography kid. We're just a people, surrounded by the ghosts of past students and the weight of possibilities, trying to figure out who we really are beneath all the labels we wear. The next hour unfolds like a dream, the kind where everything feels slightly surreal, but more real at the same time. Sarah and I have created a nest of sorts among the yearbooks and files, sitting shoulder to shoulder against the wall. My camera forgotten beside us. We're playing a game of our own invention, opening random yearbooks to random pages and making up stories about the people we find. It's silly and pointless, and exactly what Sarah Chen, perfect student council VP, would never do in the real world. Okay, this one, I say, pointing to a photo of a serious-looking girl from 1978. Her hair-perfect dome of hairspray and determination definitely went on to become a CIA agent. Look at that face. She's already mastered the art of keeping government secrets. Sarah giggles, leaning closer to see the picture. Her head is almost resting on my shoulder now, and I try not to think too much about how natural it feels. No way, she argues, with that outfit, fashion designer. Obviously, she's just serious because she's already planning her takeover of the Paris runway. Speaking of fashion designers, I say, seizing the moment of comfortable intimacy, why did you really join student council? I mean, I've seen your sketches in art class. I trail off as Sarah stiffens slightly beside me. She's quiet for a long moment, fidgeting with the corner of a page. You notice those? I notice a lot of things about you, I admit. Feeling brave in the dimness of our archive room sanctuary. Like how you always doodle dress designs during assembly meetings, or how you have different notebooks for different subjects color-coded not by class, but by how much you actually enjoy them. Sarah turns to look at me, her expression unreadable in the flickering light. That's mildly creepy, she says. But she's smiling, then the smile fades slightly. My parents think fashion design is a hobby, not a career. They've had my future planned out since before I was born. Harvard, law school. Joining my mom's firm, student council looks good on college applications, and it makes them happy, so double quotes she shrugs, but I can see the weight of expectations heavy on her shoulders. Show me, I say suddenly, reaching for my camera. Show me the Sarah Chen who designs dresses instead of organizing pep rallies. She hesitates for a moment, then takes the camera from my hands. What happens next takes my breath away. Sarah comes alive, directing me to stand in different poses, using the harsh fluorescent lighting to create dramatic shadows, turning our prison into an impromptu fashion studio. She sees things through the lens that I never would have noticed. The way the metal filing cabinets create interesting reflections. How the scattered papers on the floor could look like abstract runway designs from the right angle. You're amazing, I say softly, watching her work. She looks up, caught off guard by the sincerity in my voice. And our eyes lock, the camera slowly lowers, but neither of us looks away. Why do you do that? She whispers, do what? Look at me like you're seeing the real me, not the perfect VP, not the straightest student, just me. I take a step closer, my heart thundering in my chest. Because that's who I've been falling for since 9th grade art class, when you spent an entire period perfecting a sketch of a dress instead of following the assignment to draw fruit. The camera drops slightly in her hands, and I reach out to steady it, our fingers brushing. The touch sends electricity through my entire body, and suddenly we're standing very close. The camera caught between us like a bridge and a barrier all at once. James, she starts to say, but whatever follows is lost in the sudden blinding flash of light from outside the door, a chorus of voices that makes us jump apart like we've been shocked. Sarah, are you in there? Jessica Martinez's voice, sharp with worrying, cuts through our bubble. Oh my God, we've been looking everywhere for you. The janitor said he saw two students come in here earlier. Another voice adds, I recognize it as Mr. Thompson's. Mullet-less and significantly less amused than his yearbook photo. Sarah's eyes meet mine in the darkness, wide with something like panic. In the space of a heartbeat, I watch the walls go back up, see her straighten her posture and smooth her hair. By the time the door opens, flooding the room with harsh hallway light, she's back to being Sarah Chen, student council VP, and I'm just the weird photography kid who happened to get locked in with her. The next few minutes are a blur of explanations and apologies. Jessica hugs Sarah like she's returned from war, shooting suspicious glances in my direction. Mr. Thompson lectures us about responsibility and proper procedures for using the archive room. Through it all, Sarah doesn't look at me once, and each second of avoidance feels like a tiny knife in my chest. As they lead us out into the hallway, I realize I'm still holding my camera. Quickly, I check the photos we took, the laughing, unguarded moments. The artistic shots Sarah composed, the evidence of a different Sarah Chen that existed for a few precious hours in our accidentally shared solitude. But before I can decide what to do with them, Sarah suddenly turns back. "James," she says, her voice carefully controlled, but her eyes saying something entirely different. "The photos ... I understand immediately what she's asking. Perfect Sarah Chen can't have evidence floating around of her being anything less than perfect." I nod slightly, already reaching for the delete button, but her next words stop me cold. "Send them to me," she asks quietly, then quickly adds, "for the benefit of our audience, for the student council records, of course. We should document the need for better archive room security," as she turns away to leave with Jessica, who's already talking about emergency student council meetings and PR management. I stand frozen in the hallway, wondering if the last few hours were real or if I imagined the whole thing. But then Sarah glances back over her shoulder, just for a second, and I catch a glimpse of that unguarded smile, the one that crinkles her eyes and makes her look like the girl who snorts when she laughs and takes artistic photos in locked archive rooms. And I realize that while we might be back in the real world, something has fundamentally shifted. The question is, what happens now? Monday morning hits like a bucket of cold water. By the time I reach my locker, the whispers have already started, apparently. Being locked in the archive room with Sarah Chen for 4 hours is the most exciting thing to happen at Riverdale High. The cafeteria accidentally served energy drinks instead of fruit punch last semester. Every version of the story seems to be different. We were making out, we were fighting, we were conducting a secret student council investigation. My personal favorite is the one where I supposedly orchestrated the whole thing as part of an elaborate photography project about claustrophobia. I try to ignore the stares and murmurs as I make my way to first period, but it's hard not to notice how people suddenly stop talking when I walk by. The photos from Friday night burn a hole in my laptop bag, where I've stored them on a USB drive. I still haven't deleted them, nor have I sent them to Sarah. Every time I look at them, I question whether our time in the archive room was real or just some dust-induced hallucination. Sarah, meanwhile, seems to have perfected the art of pretending nothing happened. I catch glimpses of her throughout the morning, holding court at student council meetings, efficiently organizing this week's charity drive. Every hair in place and every smile perfectly measured. If she notices me, she doesn't show it. It's like those hours in the archive room happen to different people entirely. By lunch, I've resigned myself to the fact that whatever moment we shared was just that, a moment, locked away in time like all the other memories in that archive room. I'm hiding out in the photography darkroom, pretending to develop photos while actually just sitting in the comforting darkness. When the door opens, letting in a slice of light and a familiar silhouette, the darkroom, really? Sarah's voice is quiet but amused. "Could you be any more on brand?" I wait for my eyes to readjust after she closes the door before responding. Says the girl who's probably supposed to be in a student council meeting right now. "Emergency meeting," she confirms, making her way carefully through the darkroom equipment. "About proper archive room security procedures, actually." Jessica's determined to prevent any future ... incidents. She pauses, close enough now that I can smell that vanilla scent again. "I told them I needed to use the bathroom." "Rebel," I say, and she laughs, that real laugh, the one with the snort at the end that she usually tries so hard to hide. "I saw the photos," she says after a moment. "You sent them to my student council email this morning." "Oh," I swallow hard. "Yeah, I thought. I mean, you asked ... double quotes. I didn't expect you to edit them like that." Her voice is soft in the darkness. "The way you made them look, it's like you saw exactly who I was trying to be in that room. Who I want to be all the time." I had spent all weekend working on those photos, trying to capture the essence of the Sarah the first had seen, the artistic soul behind the perfect facade. In one shot, she's laughing at the yearbook photos, her face transformed by genuine joy. In another, she's concentrated on taking photos herself, her artistic side shining through. Each image shows a different facet of her, like a diamond catching light from various angles. That's who you are. I say simply, the rest is just packaging. Sarah's quiet for so long that I start to wonder if I've said the wrong thing. Then, suddenly, I feel her hand find mine in the darkness. I broke up with Connor this morning, she says. The news hits me like a physical blow. Connor Matthews, star quarterback and Sarah's boyfriend of 2 years, is such a fixture in her perfect life that I had almost forgotten about him entirely during our time in the archive room. Oh, is all I can manage to say. He asked me where I was Friday night, she continues, her fingers tightening slightly around mine. I told him the truth, that I was locked in the archive room with you. He laughed and said he was glad it was you and not some guy he needed to worry about. My heart sinks a little. And I realized, she continues, her voice getting stronger, that he's never once asked to see my fashion designs. Never noticed when I'm actually happy versus when I'm just playing my role. Never really seen me at all. She takes a deep breath, not like you do. The air in the darkroom suddenly feels electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. Sarah ... I sent in my fashion portfolio. She blurts out, to Parsons, their pre-college summer program. I used the photos you took, the ones where I was directing the shots. They showed my eye for composition and design, and ... double quotes. She trails off, then adds in a smaller voice, I haven't told anyone else. Not even Jessica, my parents would ... Without thinking, I pull her into a hug. She stiffens for a moment, then melts into it, her head fitting perfectly under my chin. They're going to find out eventually. I say softly into her hair, I know, she whispers against my shirt. But maybe by then I'll be brave enough to handle it. Like I'm trying to be brave now. She pulls back slightly, though she doesn't let go completely. Even in the darkness, I can feel the intensity of her gaze. Do you know what else Connor never did? He never made me feel like being myself was enough. Like I didn't have to be perfect all the time. Like maybe the real Sarah Chen was worth knowing. My heart is pounding so hard I'm sure she can hear it. The real Sarah Chen is extraordinary. I say, my voice rough with emotion. I've been thinking, she says, her fingers playing with the fabric of my shirt, about what you said in the archive room. About falling for me since 9th grade art class. She takes a shaky breath. I think maybe I've been falling for you too. I just didn't let myself realize it. It's not exactly in the perfect VP's script to fall for the boy who sees beauty in empty swimming pools and takes artistic photos in locked archive rooms. The world seems to stop spinning for a moment. Here we are again in another dark room, surrounded by the ghosts of captured moments. But this time, when Sarah tilts her face up towards mine, there's no one to interrupt us, no bright lights, no worried voices, no roles to play or expectations to meet. Just us and the truth we found in an archive room, and the future developing like a photograph in the darkness. It's amazing how quickly gossip can evolve in a high school. By Tuesday morning, the story of the archive room incident has grown more elaborate than a Victorian novel. But for once, the reality is actually better than the rumors. Sarah and I emerged from the darkroom to find the hallways buzzing with new whispers, not about our accidental lockdown anymore, but about Sarah Chen's shocking breakup with Connor Matthews and her even more shocking appearance walking hand in hand with the school's resident photography nerd. Jessica corners us before first period, her expression a mix of betrayal and fascination. Were you ever going to tell me? She demands, waving her iPad like a weapon. Then, to everyone's surprise, especially mine, she breaks into a huge grin. Finally, do you know how exhausting it's been watching Sarah pretend not to stare at you in every assembly while you pretend not to notice her staring? Sarah's jaw drops. I did not. Oh, honey, Jessica cuts her off. I've been your best friend since 7th grade. You think I didn't notice how you volunteered for every event that needed photography coverage? Or how you suddenly developed an interest in documenting student life right after James started working for the school magazine. I turned to Sarah, who's turning an impressive shade of red. Really, every photography event. Shut up. She mumbles, but she's smiling that real smile again, the one that makes her eyes crinkle at the corners. The real test comes later that week, when Sarah finally tells her parents about Parsons. I wait outside her house in my beat-up Honda Civic, camera in hand because somehow it's become my security blanket, while she shows them her portfolio. 20 minutes later, she emerges with tears in her eyes but a smile on her face. They're not thrilled, she says, climbing into the passenger seat. But Mom looked at the photos, really looked at them, and you know what she said? She said she'd never seen me look so alive. Sarah takes a shaky breath. They're giving me a chance to prove I'm serious about it. If I get into the summer program, they'll consider letting me apply to Parsons for college instead of Harvard Law. I reach over and squeeze her hand. They'll come around. No one can look at your designs and not see how talented you are. Speaking of designs, she says, suddenly looking nervous, I have something to show you. She pulls out her sketchbook, the real one, not the careful, proper one she uses in art class. I've been working on something. The pages are filled with a series of photography-inspired fashion designs, dresses that incorporate camera elements, suits with patterns that mimic light and shadow, accessories that look like vintage camera parts transformed into wearable art. These are incredible, I breathe, touching the pages reverently. They're for my Parsons application. She explains, I'm calling the collection Captured Moments. It's about how sometimes the most beautiful things in life happen when you're not trying to be perfect, when you're just caught in a moment. Being real, she looks at me meaningfully. Like being accidentally locked in an archive room with someone who sees the real you. 2 weeks later, we return to the archive room, properly supervised this time, with the door safely propped open to finally finish the digitization project we never completed. But now, as we sort through old photographs and records, everything feels different. Sarah sits cross-legged on the floor, her perfect VP posture forgotten as she sketches design ideas in between scanning documents. I alternate between actually working and taking photos of her, capturing moments that show both Sarah's, the efficient student council VP, and the passionate artist, existing in perfect harmony. You know, she says, looking up from a particularly elaborate dress design inspired by a 1985 yearbook photo. I used to think being perfect was about never making mistakes, never letting anyone see your flaws. But maybe it's about finding someone who makes your flaws feel like features. Deep thoughts from the archive room philosopher, I tease, snapping another photo of her mock-serious expression. I'm serious, she protests, throwing an eraser at me. I mean, look at us. If someone had told me a month ago that I'd be sitting here, planning a fashion career, dating the school photographer, and actually being happy about it all, I would have thought they were crazy. Dating the school photographer, I raise an eyebrow. Is that what we're calling this? She gets up and walks over to me, taking the camera from my hands and placing it carefully aside. Well, I was thinking more along the lines of falling in love with the boy who showed me it was okay to be myself, she says softly. But dating the school photographer works too. As I lean in to kiss her, I can't help but smile at how perfect this moment is. Not perfect in the way Sarah used to strive for, with every hair in place and every action calculated, but perfect in its realness. The fluorescent lights still flicker overhead, the dust still swirls in the air, and somewhere in this room are the records of thousands of students who came before us, each with their own stories of love and discovery. But this story, our story, started with an accidentally locked door and ended with so much more being unlocked, dreams, truths, and hearts. Tomorrow will still be the hottest gossip at Riverdale High. Sarah will still have to navigate between her parents' expectations and her own dreams, and I'll still be the guy who sees beauty in empty swimming pools, but now we're facing it all together, capturing moments and creating new ones. one photograph and one sketch at a time. The bell rings, signaling the end of our authorized archive room time. As we pack up our things, Sarah pauses by the door. "You know what's funny?" she says, looking back at the room that changed everything. "Everyone thinks being locked in here was some kind of accident." I stop what I'm doing and stare at her. "Wait, what are you saying?" She gives me that mischievous smile that I've come to love so much. Let's just say that maybe perfect Sarah Chen knew exactly what she was doing when she let that door close behind us that Friday. She winks and walks out, leaving me standing there with my mouth open. I shake my head, laughing as I follow her into the hallway. Because of course, even in supposedly accidentally getting locked in a room, Sarah Chen had a plan, and I wouldn't have it any other way.